Welcome to Math. Mr. Jorgens here. We're going to be talking about section 3.5 on graphing linear equations. This is going to be a part 1. We'll have a part 2 tomorrow. Make sure you pay attention as there will be a few questions for you along the way. Point here. Alright, so we're going to start with the definition of slope. Slope is the main idea of this whole week. So the main big concept I want you to be able to take away from this whole week is the idea of slope. You should have talked about it in Math 8 last year. So we have the slope of a line passing through 2 points. So slope, our big concept. What that's equal to is it's equal to the change in y divided by the change in x. So it's a ratio of the change in y divided by the change in x. Now, what you've probably seen before is there's two ways of doing this. The first way is I'm going to call it the formula way. So we're going to start with the formula way, and then we're going to do the graph way of doing it. So for the formula way of doing it, and usually when I go over this in Algebra 1, people are like, oh yeah, I've heard this before in 8th grade, is that the slope, m, is equal to the change in y, meaning y2 minus y1, over the change in x, x2 minus x1. And we use m to denote our slope here. That's kind of what that symbol means, is slope. And the reason why we use m is it's a Latin word of slope is derived from the word mountain. So you can think of like mountain as being the slope or how steep something is. Or you can just remember that m is the symbol for slope in math. Now, the x2 and y2 and all of those values are going to come from our 2 points. So if we have a line going through 2 points here, let's have the green one and the yellow one. So if we have a line going through those 2 points, and let's say that the green one is at the point 1, 2, and let's say the yellow one is at the point 5, 4. Now what this is saying is that we can find the slope using this formula. And the way that the formula would work is that for our first point here, that's going to be 0.1. So if I consider this to be 0.1 here, then my x1 and y1 values are going to come from my first point. So in this case, my x1 would be 1, and my y1 would be 2. So x1 would be 1, and y1 would be 2. I'm not going to solve it out, but you would plug them into the formula there. And then for my second point here, we would have this as 0.2, and it would be x2 would be the x coordinate of that point, so 5, and y2 would be the y coordinate of that point, so 4. So my x2 would be equal to 5, and my y2 would be equal to 4. Then we plug them into the formula, subtract and divide, and we'll work on that on a future screen. The second way of thinking about this is by using the graph. And this is more the concept, and from the graph, we can say that the slope is equal to the rise over the run. And we can think of rise as the change in y. So my rise is kind of like the change in y I had here, and the run is going to be the change in x, or the horizontal change. So if I have that same graph as I had on the one I did with the formula, and I have the point at 1, 2, and I have a point at 5, 4, the way I can go ahead and calculate the slope is by calculating the rise over the run. And the rise is going to be the vertical change. So in my vertical change here, I can see I'm going from 2 up to 4, so my rise is going to be 2. And then for my run, I'm going from an x value of 1 to an x value of 5, so I'm going over by 4. And you maybe can think of it as counting the squares on the graph, or just thinking of the vertical change over the horizontal change, or rise over run. So in this case, our slope would be rise 2 over the run 4. And if we simplify that fraction, 2/4 is the same as 1/2. So if we're going through and calculating the slope, we can do it either from our formula here, and that's a formula you're going to need to know, or from counting the rise over the run off the graph. All right, so example 1, we're going to find the slope of this given line here through the points -3, -2, and the point 3, 2. I'm going to do it both ways, and then you'll be able to select on the next question which way you'd like to do it. The first way is rise over run. So if I'm going to do it from the graph, m would be equal to the rise over the run. And in this case, my rise, I'm going up from -2 to 2. So that would be 2 spaces, 1, 2, up to 0, and then 2 more spaces up to 2. So I'm going up by 4. So my rise is going to be 4 there. And then for my run, I would go over from -3 to 3. And that'd be 3 spaces to 0 from -3, and another 3 spaces from 0 to 3, for a total of 6 spaces over. So 4 over 6. Which as a fraction is equivalent to 2 over 3. So my slope is going to be 2/3. So that's if we want to do the rise over the runway. We also have our formula. So m equals y2 subtract y1 over x2 subtract x1. And if you're planning on using this formula on the next screen, you should probably pause the video and write it down really quick so that you have it. And if we're looking at this, my first point here is going to be x1 and y1. So I'm going to go ahead and put in -3 and -2 in to my formula. So -3 is x1 and -2 is y1. And then for my second point, x2 and y2, 3 and 2. So x of point 2, x2 means x of point 2. So I have 3 and I have 2. And again, I have these subtraction signs within the equation. So I tried to write it down exactly as is. The yellows being 0.2, the greens being 0.1, and then my black subtraction from the structure of my original formula. Now what I should know is that anytime I have minus and negative like that, that's the same as adding a positive, right? So 2 minus -2 is the same as 2 plus 2. 3 minus a -3 is the same as 3 plus 3, right? Because a double negative makes a positive or addition. 2 plus 2 is 4. 3 plus 3 is 6. So my slope would be 4 over 6. That should match the 4 over 6 that you got up here. We can simplify that in the same way again. Remember, I always have to simplify my answers down. So once I simplify that down, I have 4/6 is equal to 2 over 3 by dividing top and bottom by 2. In both these cases, my slope is going to be 2/3, so the slope of that line is 2/3. All right, example 2 is one for you to try. Go ahead and find the slope between those 2 points. You can use either method. All right, so hopefully on the first one, if you did the rise over run method, you could have gotten up 7 over 3 for a rise over run of 7 over 3. And then if I look at my formula way of doing it, y2 minus y1 ends up being 4 minus a -3, or 4 plus 3, which is 7. And x2 minus x1 is 5 minus 2, which makes 3. Again, both these answers are the same because either process is finding the change in y over the change in x, which by definition is what our slope would be of this line. All right, let's take a look at example 3 here. We're going to find the slope given that table. Again, we have a bunch of coordinate points. So if you're given a table, the way you're going to go ahead and find the slope is by pulling 2 points out of that table. So again, the points, the way you pull them is 1x goes with 1y. So like for point 1, we could say 4, 20. And then for point 2, I can say 7, 14. It doesn't matter which points you pick as long as you pick 2 points and you pick an x with that specific y. And then once you have that, you can use your formula m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So now that we've selected those 2 points, go ahead and input our values and calculate the slope. So if you go ahead and work that out, 14 minus 20 makes a negative 6 in the top. 7 minus 4 makes 3 in the bottom, so our slope of this line would be negative 2. And the nice thing with the table is we don't even have to graph it, right? We can find the slope straight from our formula here without even graphing the line. We're going to go ahead and try one more of those. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at example 4. We're going to find the slope given the table 2, 4, 6, 8 for the x's and 10, 15, 25, 20, and 25 for the y's. So go ahead and select your 2 points, and then I'm going to write down that formula for you. So once you select your 2 points, you're going to use m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 to calculate out that slope. When you're ready, you can go ahead and enter your answer. All right, let's take a look at the answer on that one. x1 and y1, 2 and 10. x2 and y2 would be 4 and 15. Plug them in. 15 minus 10 makes 5 in the top. 4 minus 2 makes 2 in the bottom. Hopefully you remember how to use this formula. It's one that comes up in your Math 8 class. We're going to be using it a bunch on the big ideas practice for this section. We're going to continue with section 3.5 tomorrow. So hopefully you have a good start on slope today.